Okay, so we're back to our second video here, and we are going to be focusing on the extrinsic emotion regulation strategies. And so I'm really going to be focusing on topics of sleep, physical activity, and food. I am not a doctor or nutritionist or anything like that, so I'm really just sharing the research that I found to kind of help give you a sense of really this mind-body connection. And I think that's a very, very important topic, and that's also very much expanding in my field. So what's connecting sleep, physical activity, and food? It helps maintain, all these things help maintain balance with the body. So we need all of these things to just function well and function normally. And also helps increase our intrinsic emotion regulation capacity. And so basically, if we don't have these things, or we're not doing them, we have enough of these things, or quality of these things, then it's really hard for us to employ the intrinsic emotion regulation strategies that are really effective because they take effort. And so we're going to, again, revisit that theme. Okay, so these are again, three topics we'll just cover. And let's jump into sleep. So it's a really cute picture of a puppy. It's not my puppy, just one that I found, but sleep is just so important. Sleep has been shown over and over again, it relates to anxiety and mood disorders. And in general, it relates to our overall physical health as well. So, sleep is important in so many domains. Lack of sleep or poor quality of sleep really affects us. So what do I mean by lack of sleep or poor quality sleep? Typically, so these are not hard and fast rules, but in general, that's having less than 6 hours. So you really want 6 hours or more of uninterrupted sleep. So even if you get 8 hours of sleep, if you're waking up every 2 hours, or you wake up and you can't go back to bed, that also affects the quality of sleep. And you really want this to be happening regularly. So this is not just a weekend thing, this is an everyday thing. So for those of you that are already, pausing here and going, wait a minute, that's not me, I'm not doing this, that's okay. One of the topics that I cover most regularly in my work as a therapist is sleep hygiene, so you can look that up. And what I do is I work with clients to create a sleep care plan. So you can do this also for yourself. And so someone's coming to me and they're saying, I'm super anxious, I can't focus, I'm not doing well in class. Definitely wanting to sit with how is that impacting you, how do you feel about that. But also I'm going to start with, okay, well, tell me about your sleep. And I would say 8 out of 10 times, the client is saying, actually, I don't have good sleep. Not always, it's not always the case, but a lot of the times it is the case. And so we really break that down. What does that mean? And how can I spend time to create now almost like a ritual, but it's really more like part of your routine lifestyle, and help you get the sleep you need. So, the thing about lack of sleep is that what happens is we increase our awareness of negative stimuli, meaning if we have lack of sleep, that means we're limited on resources, physical resource, our mind and body, say. So whatever resources we have, it's going to be used just to keep you alive, and therefore our mind doesn't need to focus on good things because good things are not threatening. It's going to look at the bad things. And so we're really just going to pick out all the bad things. And the problem is that sometimes gray things, which is very, very regular in our life, sometimes our mind can't distinguish a neutral or gray thing from a bad thing. And if it can, it's just going to put it in the bad category to be safe. So you're going to be focusing on negative things. It's also, of course, we all feel this, our attention, it's hard to manipulate our attention, meaning that when we go into these intrinsic emotion regulation strategies, we need our attention to do that. So we can't be doing the intrinsic emotional regulation strategies effectively without sleep. It also increases inflammation in our body, and this is something that I'm going to talk about again. So what do I mean by inflammation? Well, when you get, say, a cold, our body has almost like an alarm system or defense response, and that is to signal all sorts of reactions in our body to create all sorts of cells to come and address that cold. And so our body is like working overtime in a lot of ways, and this is really important because inflammation itself is shown to be related to a host of mental health experiences. So this is really, really important. So talking about physical activity, that's a picture of me doing some yoga, and I know that right now, during the filming of this, recording of this, we all are cooped up inside, so physical activity is kind of hard right now, and I completely understand that. So physical activity is really important because it helps us decrease our negative emotions, just kind of at the almost like our baseline, our baseline of positivity increases. So it helps with implicit regulation of emotions, meaning that without us even thinking, something might happen, and without us even realizing it, we manage our emotion with that. It's very, very important to have that because things are happening all the time in our day. So say that I have a cold shower. Okay, so if my capacity on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that I'm full of emotional capacity, it's generally at a 5. Well, that cold shower is going to kind of easily knock me down, or more easily knock me down. But if I engage in physical activity, and again, this is like if we're doing this regularly, I might bump up to say like an 8. So it's going to take a lot more than a cold shower to really bring me down. And it might happen even without us knowing that, okay, I'm like, oh, the water's so cold, it sucks, I hate this. It's okay, no problem, I'm just going to take a quick shower and then move on to breakfast or whatever. And this all might be happening without me being aware of this kind of thought process. Or it might be very quick. So lack of physical activity, we're not able to do this implicit emotion regulation. And then I also want to talk about that mind-body connection. So when we engage in physical activity, we really are strengthening this mind-body connection. And it's really important because sometimes when we're feeling an emotion, some of us, and that includes me, often myself, I may not feel it emotionally, but I might feel it physically. I might feel like there's a weight on my chest, and that might signal that actually that means I'm feeling stressed out. I might have a headache, or feel really drowsy, and that might actually be me feeling depressed. But if I'm not having that kind of regular check-in with my body, I may not know that. So it's really important to establish getting to know yourself, having that mind-body connection. So the third topic is food, and this is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. in general, and also how it relates to mental health and well-being. It's a very interesting topic. In the last 4 years, we've had a lot of new research come out, so I'll share a little bit of that. And yeah, so this picture is actually a picture of homemade vegan sushi that I made, and I was very proud of myself, so I thought I'd share it. Um, okay, so we're talking about food, um, food is very much related to our anxiety and mood disorders, because there is a communication between the body and the brain. So lack of food, or especially low quality of food, is going to increase, again, that inflammation. It's going to make it harder for the brain and the mind to communicate. And I'm going to go into this a little bit more. And so also, kind of with that poor communication, what happens is there's our stomach and our minds also have almost an imbalance of all these different hormones and neurochemicals to signal. So these are really important for just our general sense of well-being. Okay. So this is kind of a nice picture. I did not create this picture, but I think it just highlights there's kind of communication happening between the gut and the brain constantly, and we're even thinking about the gut as our second brain. And so, without going into too much detail, because I can easily nerd out on this, but we have a bunch of bacteria or microorganisms in our gut. So this is what this is referring to here. And these bacteria, they're like cells, so they have cellular walls, but they lack the organelles and the nucleus that our cells typically have. And so within the walls of these bacteria, there lives what we call an endotoxin, and an endotoxin is just a toxin that is inside the body. And oftentimes when we have foods that are not very good for us, we have what we call massive cellular bacterial die-off. So meaning these guys tend to die and then release those toxins into the body. And all of this debris can really just sit in our circulatory system. It spikes at 3 hours and can sit for about 15, just from one meal. And it signals an inflammatory response, because remember that cold analogy, or that cold example I gave? So if we're having a lot of dead cells happening in our body's going to be like, wait a minute, something's not right. I'm gonna try to fix that, and it's going to have an inflammatory response. And that's, when that happens, it really gets in the way of signaling to our brain. So it disrupts that connection, because there's a connection with a nerve from our brain all the way down to our gut. And what's really interesting is that a lot of things that typically we've talked about in more of affecting the brain are made in the brain, different neurotransmitters, different hormones, are actually created in the gut. So I think that's really, really important. So we have things like, so I'm sure many of us, or some of us, might have heard of serotonin. So serotonin, people call it the happy hormone, for example, and that serotonin is actually made, 90% of it is made in our gut. So it's really, really important to have that. There's also GABA, which helps us reduce our stress, and that's also created a lot of times signaled by these bacteria in our gut. So, in fact, good bacteria can help repair that kind of damage and prevent that kind of massive cellular die-off. So, I'm just kind of sharing and nerding out a little bit because, we all know, okay, yeah, I should be eating well, um, but I think what we don't realize is the effect of um, food on our mental health and well-being, and how heavy that effect is. So just to kind of follow up, there are two links here that are probably going to do a better job explaining this, but it's a very interesting kind of new horizon for mental health. So I recommend you check it out, and we will continue with the well, one more slide, and then we'll continue to the next video. So really this is just re-emphasizing that sleep, physical activity, and food, they're the building blocks for all the tools to manage our emotions. Without these, then it's really hard to do these more intrinsic emotion regulation strategies that take more effort. So if this is like effort, it takes more effort to do different strategies, and oftentimes the ones that are more effortful can be really helpful. We need to have this. So it's important to start with, am I getting enough sleep and good quality of sleep? Am I being physically active? Do I have access to food? Am I eating the best that I can? And again, I'm not a doctor or a nutritionist, but that's just kind of what the research is saying. So it's something to definitely consider. Okay, so we will resume talking about intrinsic emotion regulation strategies in the next video.